Welcome to the Strange North channel. In this video, I'm going to show you the top 10 haunted locations in Edmonton, Alberta. I'm not going to go into the debate over whether ghosts are real or not. I'm somewhere on the fence. There are things that I find credible and things that I don't. But one thing I find really interesting about looking at haunted locations is you just learn a bit more about a town or city's history by looking at some of its oldest buildings, which often have a cool history of their own. So this is the top 10 list of places in Edmonton that are generally accepted as having a legend of some sort of a ghost story or paranormal activity associated with them. And the first 4 stops on our list are going to be downtown Edmonton. The next 4 stops are going to be south of the river in the old Strathcona University area. And then the final 2 stops are sort of outliers. They're away from the geographic center of the city. So let's get started. At number 1 is the Fairmont Hotel MacDonald. Now, this is one of Edmonton's oldest and most iconic buildings. It was opened in 1915 by the Grand Trunk Pacific Railway, and it's considered one of Canada's grand railway hotels. And like all of the other Fairmont hotels throughout the country, it has at least a couple ghost stories associated with it. People have talked about hearing the sound of a galloping horse or a horse-drawn carriage from various spots throughout this building. Guests at the hotel have talked about seeing the apparition of a smoking man who is seen sitting in the wingback chair of the executive suite. And staff members at the hotel have also talked about receiving phantom room calls from unoccupied rooms. At number 2 is the McKay Avenue School. Now, this building was opened in 1905. It's now a provincial municipal historic resource, and it houses the Edmonton Public School Board Archives and Museum. It's actually really interesting. In 1906 and 1907, this building actually housed the first 2 sessions of the Legislative Assembly of Alberta. So the formation of Alberta's government really happened within its walls. It was used as a school until 1983. And there is this legend about a construction worker who fell off the roof during the school's expansion. And people have talked about the feeling of being watched while they're in this building and objects being moved around on their own and lights being turned on and off. And there's this story about this man named Ron Halady, who was a janitor at the school. And apparently he used a Ouija board to contact the school's ghost, who called himself Peter as he was communicating through the Ouija board. At number 3 is the Alberta Block, or the old CKUA building. This is right on Jasper Avenue, which is downtown Edmonton's main street. And this building was the home of CKUA for many years, which was the first public broadcaster in Canada. Now, the legend goes that there was this man named Sam who was the caretaker of the building. And in 1950, according to the story, Sam was lobotomized by the Alberta government for threatening to kill the premier at the time. Now, Sam's ghost has apparently been seen outside the radio control room of the building when it was used by CKUA, and people have talked about smelling cigar smoke and hearing opera singing, 2 things that are attributed to Sam, who enjoyed smoking cigars and watching the opera. At number 4 is the Edmonton General Hospital. This is also on Jasper Avenue in downtown Edmonton. This is the oldest building on our list and one of the oldest buildings in the city. It was opened in 1895, and there's a legend of a construction worker who either died while working on the basement or fell off a balcony of the building. And his ghost is the main apparition associated with this place. But there's also a legend of a ghostly woman who has been seen wandering throughout the halls looking for her dead child. And people have talked about hearing the phantom cries of children from the old pediatric ward of the building. So now we're going to move south of the river to the old Strathcona area, and at number 5 is the Princess Theatre. Now, this is the oldest theatre in Edmonton. It was opened in 1915, and for many years there were rooms that were rented above the theatre, and the main ghost associated with this place is that of the ghostly bride. The story varies. Either she was left at the altar of her wedding or rejected by her lover in a different way, but she has been seen everywhere from the main staircase of the building to the main lobby, and she's even been seen hovering above the projector room of the theater. At number 6 is the Walterdale Theatre. This is just a couple blocks north of the Princess Theatre. This is a playhouse instead of a movie theatre. And this building is the oldest fire hall in Alberta, the old Strathcona No. 1 fire hall, which was opened in 1909. The main ghost here is affectionately named Walt, who appears as an oddly dressed fireman and apparently turns lights on and off and moves things around. And people have also talked about seeing and hearing ghostly horses as well, something that has reportedly happened in different haunted fire halls from throughout Canada. So now we're going to move a bit to the west to the University of Alberta campus, and at number 7 is the Pembina Hall. This is now student residences. The building was opened in 1914, and it's gone through a few different uses over the years. It was used by soldiers during the First World War, and it was actually used as a hospital during the Great Influenza pandemic, and many people died within its walls. The main ghost of this building is that of the young nurse who has been seen wandering the halls looking for her dead lover. Also on the University of Alberta campus at number 8 is the Rutherford House. Now this building is a provincial historic site. It was the home of the first Premier of Alberta, Alexander Rutherford, who lived here from 1911 until 1941. The main ghost of the building is that of a young boy, and his apparition has been seen and heard running throughout the second floor of the house. So at number 9 is the Gibbard block, or the Boheme bed and breakfast building. Now this is really one of the most iconic and well-known ghost stories of Edmonton. So the Gibbard block was built in 1912 as luxury apartments, and it was one of the first buildings in Edmonton with power and water. So as the legend goes, the caretaker of the building killed his wife and then dragged her body all the way down the stairs to the basement, where he threw her body in the incinerator. And guests at the bed and breakfast in the building have talked about hearing the sound of a body being dragged down the stairs and even having their sheets pulled off them in the middle of the night. The building no longer houses the Boheme bed and breakfast. That hasn't existed for many years. There's now a bunch of businesses in this building, some shared offices, and apparently there's also a small Airbnb suite in this building if you wanted to stay here for yourself and get the overnight experience. And at number 10, to close out our list, is considered one of the most haunted locations in Canada, and that's the old Charles Camsell Hospital building. Now, this building was built in 1914 as a Jesuit college. It was later occupied by the Canadian Army during the Second World War, and then in 1946, the federal government turned it into an Indian sanatorium to treat First Nations patients with tuberculosis, but it eventually just turned into a general hospital where many First Nations people ended up. And from the 1960s through the 1980s, the Alberta eugenics program performed many terrible things here. There were forced sterilizations, medical testing, experimental surgeries, and just vast stories of many forms of abuse happening in this hospital. So the hospital was shut down in 1996, and it stood abandoned for many years. The building itself and the grounds around it are currently being redeveloped into this new condominium development. Going back to the fall of 2021, as similar searches were happening throughout Canada, crews performed underground searches on this property to look for locations of possible grave sites. Nothing was found during that initial search, but there may be similar searches done on this property in the future. This location is one location on this list where I definitely like to go into in much more detail in a separate video, just because there's so much history associated with this place. But I just wanted to touch on it briefly for this top 10 list. So that was Edmonton's top 10 haunted locations. I hope you found that interesting and informative. There are definitely a couple more haunted places at Edmonton that I didn't get to on this video that I'm going to get to in a separate video down the road. And if you watch this far, I'm very grateful. And if you'd like to watch more of my videos, I'm going to be uploading at least one new video per week. So please subscribe to my channel and give it a like if you're so inclined. I'm just starting out and I can definitely use all the help I can get. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a great week, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Strange North channel.